This is SEEK Bytes, the software engineering podcast by Seek.com. Join our experts as they share their thoughts and tips on mastering the craft of code. From career advice to technical deep dives, SEEK Bytes is a podcast for software engineers by software engineers. Hi everyone, welcome back to SEEK Bytes. Today we have Nick Skoufis, Bridget Barnes, Elliott, Millar and myself, Reyna speaking about ChatGPT.
All right, so Reyna, how did you? Why don't we just kick off?
Fishbowl from Ren. Get out of here, Ren.
So, Reyna, how did you get into engineering?
I studied engineering at university. I was doing a commerce degree, and I was studying at Melbourne University, and they had this breadth pathway where you could do subjects outside of your the subjects that you study, and I did an engineering pathway, and that's kind of how I got exposed to software engineering, and I really liked it, and so I decided to do more of that after.
That's really cool. So what was your original degree called or planned for?
A Bachelor of Commerce.
What is commerce?
Is that for taxes?
It could
Is
be.
that accounting?
It's this wide umbrella about all things.
So it's like IT,
Commercial.
right?
Just like engineering.
Yeah.
Engineering is the whole world. So
Yeah.
it's commerce. I guess that kind of makes sense, right?
Can you
Okay.
explain home loans to me?
I don't think so.
Nobody can explain home loans. Home loan go up. Cool,
So
cool.
you
So homes.
are working at SEEK now, possibly
Yes.
from your home. How do you find that?
I really like it. I started full-time work during COVID, so I joined SEEK maybe a month before the lockdown happened. So I was in the office for 1 month. I got to meet some great people, and then I worked from home every single day of the week.
That's a pretty big jump from
Yeah.
kind of just starting. So you were at uni and then you came to work full time and then
Yeah.
boom, straight into 5 days a week working from home.
Yeah, that was hard, but I think I was lucky in the sense that we had the graduate program boot camp or accelerator program now in person in the office for the whole month before joining the team. So meeting other grads, having that in-person learning was great.
What good timing. That's
Yeah, really
we
good
were
timing.
very lucky.
yeah.
They had just gone into their teams when the pandemic
Wow.
caused
About a couple of
everything.
weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm just honestly glad that you actually got to meet your team in person because I think
Yeah.
it's so much less intimidating, right? Being able to put faces to names and
Yeah.
We'd been working together, Bridget, 9 months before
the
we met in
first time
person.
that we met in person, I was just like, oh my God, like he's real, he's
It was,
flesh.
I really similarly.
You got to do a double take when you see people in person for the first time, don't you? It
It was,
just
yeah.
throws you because you've seen someone's face and then you know everyone seems to be the same size when they're on Zoom, and so you go from on Zoom to in person. You're like, is that? No. Yes. No. I don't know.
I also worked with Nick's brother for a little while too. So Nick was
I
much
wondered if they
taller.
were brothers. I was like, come
Yeah.
on, Skoufis, Adam Skoufis, Nick
Yeah.
Skoufis.
I
Surely
just
they're
was
related.
like-
It's not a common last name.
No, but I was like, he's larger than life, both in presence and physicality. Like he's not Adam. This is
Yes, we are, cut from a similar but in some ways very different cloth.
yeah. Serena, when you were trying to decide what your career jump was, did you just go online and be like, AI, please tell me what career
definitely
should
what
I
I
make?"
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the AI, is it taking our jobs? That's the big question
No.
everyone wants to know.
It's not.
Bridget with the controversial no.
No.
I don't think that's controversial, but yeah. Go on,
I
Bridget.
mean, look at everything that AI is already doing, right? No one's lost their job yet. It's human AI.
People definitely have.
People have?
For sure. Automation, yeah.
Automation always does that.
Automation's getting rid of people's jobs, but I agree
automation,
with you.
yes. But even look at when Photoshop started introducing things like content aware filters, people were like, this is the end of editing. I'm not going to have to make my horrible fan edits anymore because I can just tell Photoshop to do it.
You're right. I think automation is different. I mean, look, I'm on the same side as you. I agree. I don't know if mechanical like labor and moving around, there's lots of ports that are automated now, and you don't have people necessarily going and driving forklifts around, although that's a whole separate thing because the longshoremen's union is very strong, I think. But whatever, we have the technology to automate ports and not do that. When it's kind of quote unquote knowledge work, right? It is different. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's not going to take our jobs, but is it going? I think the more interesting question is it going to change our jobs?
Oh, it absolutely will change our jobs. But just to stick with the automation just for a moment, whether or not we talk about technical automation or physical automation, even if it does get rid of jobs, it always creates more. Like, because new industries pop up, new things pop up. So in the longer term, technological advances and automation and other things, there is a net benefit. Right.
I mean, it sucks for the people whose jobs are being automated, but yes, I agree with you broadly.
It does.
Like it's lots of, there's fewer chimney sweeps than there were back in the day.
That's true. That's very true. Now we've got our Roomba to do it for us.
The worst thing in the world, but yes. It
wouldn't really matter if we had universal basic income, just saying.
Saying.
Totally agreed.
So Reyna, what do you think? What is ChatGPT to you? Do you think it's the new automation tool of the future that's going to, replace engineers?
No, I don't think so. I think like what Nick and Bridget was saying, it will change the nature of what we do. Like there's less of the mundane tasks that you might have to do as an engineer. Like say, for example, the other day we wanted to refactor our tests to unit tests from like several describes into an each table test. That was nice and quick to chuck into ChatGPT and get it to reformat it for us.
Did you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Hey, that's it's something that I haven't started getting to the habit of, but it's something that I've been planning to do. Is just kind of like, I was doing something similar the other day, something kind of gnarly with some like Terraform configuration, and like, I figured ChatGPT could probably do a decent job of it.
It wasn't perfect. You still had to clean it up, really.
So to me,
it gets there.
For me, I think this is the core of why it's not going to replace anybody's job anytime soon, is because it gets things wrong very confidently, and it needs somebody to manually check it, and it's not always a subtle. It's not always glaringly obvious what needs correction. Sometimes it's quite subtle.
Yeah, it's a contextual knowledge of what you're trying to achieve that it doesn't
absolutely.
know.
Yes.
I think there's something to be said, though, and I just want to put this out there. I think that it may replace some people's jobs, right? And for those people, and I'm sorry, and this is a bit mean, but
Here we go.
If it replaces you, you're not very good.
Look, if...
Or your manager's not very good or something, right?
Because the thing is, right, ChatGPT, it is a chatbot. And look, I'm going to throw out the technical terms. It's a learning model and it's a neural network and yada, 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 right? But it's not a person. It doesn't have that contextual knowledge. It isn't a critical thinker. That's not what it's actually doing, right? So you can't give it a problem and expect it to do critical thinking.
It's just, we should break it down. Just for anybody that doesn't know, effectively what ChatGPT is doing when it's giving you an answer is it is taking everything you've told it and everything it kind of like knows about the world that it's been trained on, and it is just trying to predict the next word and then the next word after that and the next word after that. And obviously it is a little bit more complicated than that, and it can do things like, it's actually not the next word, it's the next token, which could be part of a word, which is why it can kind of invent new words, right? But all it's doing is it's giving you like, what's the next most, given all the things I've seen in the past and what you've given me now, what's the next most probable thing? And that's why it can go back and forth. It takes what you said and what's it said and keeps going like that. So you're totally right, is that it doesn't like, it has derived some structure and meaning from things sufficient enough that it can predict what should be next, but it's not the same as, and that's why it can make such basic mistakes.
Absolutely.
That no human would make.
And this is why you'll always need engineers, right? Because as Reyna said, it still needed some editing, right? Like it wasn't perfect. And it's much like any of the other IDE tools you might have. Like if you say, I'm going to go and just use the refactor command to refactor this token, sometimes it picks up comments or it picks up string literals or other things that you're like, I didn't actually want to change that. And so if you give all of that trust to this tool, it's like, well, there is inherent risk with that, right? Not that there's not risk with humans, but the tool itself is not perfect, and we know it's good at predicting. And I don't know how much the three of you have played around with this, or anyone listening. I played around with it a little bit, not a huge amount, not really with work yet, but it kind of blew me away a little bit when I first played with it. I went, right, I'm just going to test it out. Look, I was working on this particular React component. I needed to do something not very nice. I had like a separation of concerns issue, and the requirement was this parent component should be able to decide when this form gets submitted as opposed to the form itself, which has the button. And it was kind of like, yeah, that's not really how it should work. Anyway, I was like, this is a bit obscure. I'm just going to ask ChatGPT, how would I achieve this? And I was like, come on. And it immediately went, cool, so here's an escape hatch in React that will allow you to do this. However, this isn't best practice. We avoid not doing this. And I went, okay. And it gave a really detailed, really succinct response. And I was like, okay, so what is best practice then? And then it came back with, what is actually best practice in that, yeah, you should be passing a delegate to the child and the child should be controlling it. You as the parent shouldn't be able to change the behavior of the child, you know, when we're talking about solid coding and whatnot. And I'm just sitting there and I was like, okay, that was impressive. And then I was like, right, let's try something a bit more obscure. You know, I was working on a Webpack thing years ago, and I was upgrading from like 1.1 to like Webpack 4, and that was a nightmare. So I was like, right, okay, I've got Webpack 1.1, and I need to split out some vendor bundles with some normal code and also have a specific React bundle. I was like, right, okay, do that, ChatGPT. And then it came up with the perfect Webpack config, and then it said, cool, here's a Webpack 1.1. It's going to create this vendor bundle, this React bundle. Here's your entry path. And this is really old. You should really be using Webpack 4, and here's a link to the latest Webpack 4. And I went, sorry, what? You just, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, this is crazy. And so I said, right, I'm going to do something completely different just for funsies. And I went, let's make a Darkmaster Zork clone. And I said, and maybe that shows my age a little bit, and basically it was a text-based adventure, right, for console. You would enter a command and it would say, oh, you look and you see, you know, X, Y, and Z, and then you could move, you could pick
Great
up,
fun.
right? And I was like, right, let's just throw this out there. And it did it. I said, like, instantly, it went, here's a C# thing, because I said Darkmaster Zork clone in C#. That was it. It was a very short sentence.
Yeah.
It created a one-page functional main running C# app that essentially mimicked Darkmaster Zork. You know, it was only look and move commands, but it did it. And then I said, okay, well, let's improve upon this. I want to see a command pattern. So it implemented a command pattern. And then I said, well, I want that integrated into the main program you've written. And so it did that. And it just kept doing things.
Here's my question for you, though. Can you remember the times where it didn't work? I think there's a lot of kind of, what's the bias where you bias towards things that work and forget about the things that don't work? Because there's definitely a bunch of stuff that I asked it to do.
Total confirmation bias.
Yeah, it's effectively confirmation bias, right? Like, there's definitely heaps of stuff where it totally flubbed it, right? Or just like did kind of a crappy job. Like
yes.
I asked it to write a story about my cat, and it did a great job and wrote this really cute, sort of poignant little story. But then, if you keep asking it to write stories about different things, it basically writes the same story.
It does get a bit samey,
and
right?
It just doesn't know Sophia well enough.
The first one was great. The first one was like, write a story about, you know, a shy cat that meets another cat, and it was beautiful. But if you do it enough times, you'll realize that it's got such a, it's very obvious it's not human. It's got such, even when you explicitly tell it, like, I don't know, I was trying to get it to write some dark and, you know, not about my cat, but like some you know, kind of like negative, and it's got a very positive outlook on life. Everything's roses. And even when you say, like, make it kind of like have a bad ending, it kind of like doesn't, it goes, yeah, it's bad, but it was all okay in the end. Like, it doesn't really, and I feel like that there's a lot of stuff that it's not doing properly.
So here's the basic question. If I said, build me a Darkmaster Zork clone, why did it use worst possible practice first? Why didn't it use a command pattern?
And what if you didn't realize that it was the worst possible
right?
practice?
Yeah, that's
right?
the
like,
point.
And I think this is what we're all sort of saying is that you still need the human in the loop to check its work.
Absolutely.
And it's probably best used for stuff that you will be able to, that you're actually qualified qualified to
It's
also
really the
evaluate.
mundane tasks
Yeah.
that you want it to handle.
Yeah.
Like when we're talking about, look, I need to do a mass refactor or something, but then herein lies the issue, right? And this is a really important one. You know, would you really want to put your proprietary code into this tool online?
Well, look, if you
Reyna
could,
sweating.
if you could run it offline, and like if you can run your own instance of it, that's private. But I think would you want to put code in there, and would you trust it, and how long do you think it will be until we see some sort of data breach or
We already have. We've already seen it be hacked, right?
No, well, I mean somebody using ChatGPT to generate. Right, I'm like, yeah, I'll just get ChatGPT to smash me out some code for some security sensitive stuff, right? And then 18 months later, my authentication code had a bug in it, and it's kind of like, well, yeah, I didn't do my due diligence checking that it was, written by ChatGPT.
Did you encounter any funny bugs, Reyna? Or did it just works and no funny comments, no funny stories in it? It didn't have a sad ending for the...
I haven't used it as much as I think that was the only extent of it in terms of like coding wise anyway.
Yeah, I was really hoping it might like embedded a story about the cat.
It's possibly a good segue into like what's missing from how it's kind of deployed today that kind of prevents it from being really useful. And I think the one you touched on at the moment, if you use the OpenAI version of ChatGPT, it's in theory, I think I read their privacy policy. In theory, it is ingesting all the stuff you give it and using it to improve things. And if you put proprietary stuff in there, you probably run the risk that somebody else will get that proprietary code out at some point in the future. But if you could run a private instance of it, that would be incredibly useful. I'm sure they're going to offer that as a service at some point.
I think that's where it's going to go. Bridget, what do you think?
I think it's honestly missing a problem that it's trying to solve. At the moment, it's just kind of a very generic tool, right? Like a lot of people are using it as a novelty. No one's really been able to be like, this is the thing that we are trying to fix with this. They're just like, here's a cool tool. Maybe it will fix some things.
So like crypto, right?
Exactly. No, fully. I think
Alienated half the audience.
very similar to crypto, very similar to VR. It's kind of a novelty, right? Like I know that there are.
Oh,
some
don't get me
uses of
started on VR.
But like its main purpose at the moment is as a game thing, right?
It will be more useful though.
I think it'll definitely be more useful.
The
but
proof of the pudding will be in whether we see these large businesses built around it, right?
Yeah, but I do think that it's kind of at the moment still being thrown around more of like, oh, this is like a fun thing. So where can we make this work? Instead of like, we have this problem, we're looking at solutions. An AI like ChatGPT is the solution to this problem that we have. It's kind of looking for problems rather than like being the solution that we're looking for at the moment.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because Microsoft a couple of weeks ago announced they're partnering ChatGPT with Bing specifically to try and fix that problem space.
But
right?
have you seen that?
I have, and my goodness, is it terrible?
Avatar.
So
It's 2022.
it's
Avatar is not out.
it's the stuff of nightmares. Right?
I mean, like
some of it.
That is a good point. Clearly, people are investing in it, but at the same time, like Zuck is busy tanking Facebook's stock price because he's investing in VR and
He just wants legs. Give him legs.
Oh gosh, because we're talking about mass layoffs in tech, right? Is ChatGPT the cause of this? Well, no.
Not even remotely. From what I mean, if we're going to end up in that, there's a lot of commentary recently that I've seen popping up, particularly from, I think I saw something the other day from somebody who's sort of effectively like a sociologist or something, basically saying that a lot of these layoffs are like copycat, like
monkey see, monkey do, right?
Everyone
the industry
panicking.
does.
Yeah,
like,
if Facebook is going under, then surely.
Yeah, rather than actually, and I'm sure the CEOs and the CFOs of these large organizations might disagree, but yeah, I'm sure there's maybe a little bit of mass hysteria there.
So what I'm hearing is that the T800 is not coming for my job.
I don't think so.
Like physically, maybe.
Oh, physically?
You may be under physical duress from AI at any point, but
I mean,
Let's hope it
because
doesn't figure out.
the AI that's
Yeah,
already
which
running on
would-
my phone basically runs my life anyway, right? It's just not. It's not ChatGPT, and it's not an artificial general intelligence.
The artificial general intelligence, that's the holy grail. It can do whatever. And
Right.
it's not ChatGPT.
But we
We're
have
close to it.
very specific things. And I think, look, if you look at ChatGPT as what it is a chatbot. You know, it does pretty damn well as a chatbot, right? Is it an expert in anything? No. All, as you said, Nick, all it's doing is trying its best to predict what is the next thing to say. And, you know, some of the times it gets that really, really wrong. And even if you call it out on it, much like the Bing ChatGPT integration, you know, it disagrees with you and it says, no, I'm right. I'm
Yeah.
right. And you're like, well, hang on.
Where did you learn this from?
Do you think? I wonder why they don't do this, and this could be a limitation. This might just not be how it works. But I know with other kind of machine learning, or if you think about like a classifier, right? When you're doing, you know, a bit more of a mundane machine learning task, where let's say you have images of birds and images of things that aren't birds, and you train a model to recognize when it is a bird, right? You often get an answer, it is a bird, but it's based on some probability and some threshold, and you can often access that, like, you know, I'm really sure this is a bird versus I'm really sure this is not a bird. Why doesn't it, would it be useful, and could ChatGPT give you a confidence score to say, because the problem I think that a lot of people have observed with it at the moment is that it tells you something and it's very confidently wrong. It doesn't do what I think humans do, which is, I'm not totally sure about this, like, this might be the right way to go. It doesn't do that at all. It just says, this is the answer, and you have to call it out and say, you're wrong, right? What if it said, this is the answer, but I'm not totally sure, or there's a number, and it said, you know, I'm 37% sure, I'm 1% sure, I'm 99% sure about this. Does that information exist, or is it just...
I think it's kind of irrelevant. Ultimately, I actually think it could be more dangerous if it is saying, I am 100% sure of this, and it's completely wrong, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of people who would be looking up stuff, you know, there are people who are like, I am an engineer and I'm going to look at code. But there are definitely going to be people who are like, I'm asking you a question about something I don't know. And kind of using you in place of Google, you know, or some other search engine to find out this new information. And if it comes back and says, I'm 100% sure, you're like, well, I just guess that's true now.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's still going to give you the false confidence.
Well, I feel like it's even worse, right? If it has
Yeah.
said, I'm 100% sure
Yeah,
versus
true.
you just being like, I mean, you also just told me it was 2022. So, you know, like, I'm not...
There are
Right, so
definite knowledge
so
gaps.
the confidence... Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, it would almost remove the need for you to actually critically think about what is this answer it's
Yeah,
given
right?
you.
Because it's very
Yeah,
easy to look at
that's
a
a good point.
number and be like, this means it's true, right? Like,
Sure.
numbers, people really like them for, like, evidence, right? We can look at a number and be like, you're solid, you're concrete. You would
Anything over 75, you're like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
most
no,
likely
that's a really
right.
good point.
So ChatGPT, I think it's a really useful tool, but I think one of the things that is missing is obviously that private instance. For me, where it would be really useful is essentially being able to do a Google search of your own proprietary code base or your own knowledge base and just say, look, I'm new to X company. Do we have anything that handles currencies?
I think we'll end up there. I think that's a business opportunity waiting to happen, either for OpenAI or for somebody else, right? Because these large language models, I mean, they're proprietary. I guess the training, this is, again, belying my, like, sort of revealing my lack of knowledge about it, but, like, the training data is probably proprietary, what and how they train, but the actual the methodology is kind of, like, open and in published papers. And so I'd be shocked if somebody didn't do that. And I mean, that's the use case that's come up in my world as well. Like, you know, we were talking about documentation earlier. Like, imagine if you could just take all of the documentation for an organization and then ask it questions about how to do things, or even get it to generate documentation that you think is
That'd be
missing,
amazing.
and then go through with a human editor, and like it would save an incredible amount of time.
The amount of time where I'm looking for something that I know exists, and I've got to say that the code search for GitHub preview that's out there is fantastic.
Yeah,
It's so much better than just the standard GitHub search. You know, half of the time when I'm looking for something, instead of checking out my own repos or using my own search on my computer, I just go straight there because I know roughly the word or the phrase that I'm looking for. And then it searches 40 repositories for me, as opposed to me having to do that search, you know, with a grep or with command line or whatever other tool.
Yeah.
So I think having ChatGPT or some AI tool that we can do that to, that will be so useful as a developer to just have that in your toolkit.
I also think the things that we currently find hard to do at the moment, right? Like we can kind of look at documentation and be like, this is missing, I'll write some up. But I think for a lot of things like service catalogs and keeping architecture diagrams up to date without needing to have someone then go and like manually change things, like
That would be so good.
yeah, just having something that can look at the code, be like, this has changed, so I'm gonna go and update this service catalog, I'm gonna go update this architecture diagram. Having a easy way to keep those in sync, because I've been to a bunch of talks and I've been researching different ways that people are doing this, and so much of it seems to come back to like some sort of manual action. Like if you're doing something like this, we would love to hear it, because I really don't want to have to keep writing manual architecture diagrams.
But it's also for organization charts, like, or teams moving around or changing names. It's like, who do I have to contact if I want to find out more about something?
Absolutely.
That would be really helpful.
And even like our HR system here doesn't fully cover that, because I know there are some weird reporting lines, like reporting into Nick. We used to have this problem a lot where I didn't like look like I was part of the team I was in for a while, because we had some strange reporting lines there. But like even having that, right?
If you could ask it, you know, who is in this team, or
who
does
looks
this...
after CI/CD, or who's in
Yeah.
charge of authentication or things like that. That would be amazing.
There are other ways to solve that, I would say. Like, I know we were talking about this internally for a little while. Like, you know, do we use something like Stack Overflow for Teams, right? To give that kind of very kind of like question answer thing. And I sort of, I don't know, for whatever reason, it seemed like maybe not a good idea for a little while, but I'm coming around to it. I think it could actually be incredibly useful, because, look, the alternative is you just search in Slack, because somebody's probably asked the question. That's not what people are conditioned to do. People very much are conditioned to go and search in Stack Overflow.
But that can also get quite outdated, like
It can,
when the
yeah.
organization
I
changes.
think I haven't used Stack Overflow for Teams. I listened to a podcast with their CEO who was talking about it. It's not a plug for them or whatever, but I think they have thought of stuff like that, and they've thought of stuff like Stack Overflow for Teams only has upvotes and not downvotes. Right? Because you can imagine that, like, if you put a bad answer out there and some people downvote your ass, it's not going to be very good for the team morale.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Bring it in.
Yeah, the recency thing, true as well, and that's probably also where something like ChatGPT can come in, where it might be able to go, yeah, this was something from 6 months ago, like it might not be true, or it might have a bit more insight.
And some of those things don't even change. Like if you go to Stack Overflow, sometimes you will find something that it's 12 years old, but
it's still true.
It's true, or people have gone and updated it. So having ChatGPT or some other tool to be able to go to and to be able to find the link for me, like that'd be the dream right there.
Yeah, I think the other thing that interests me about ChatGPT, or the large language models, whatever, is like what can it do? The chat interface is, as I think we find as developers, right? Like you could almost compare it to the GUI interface, right? Versus like a CLI interface, where like the GUI is really useful sometimes for some things, but a lot of the time when you know exactly what you want to do, the CLI can be a lot more powerful.
Yep.
It would be really interesting to see what can you do with kind of like a ChatGPT type model that has a lot of context and understanding and can generate new ideas and new things, or whatever facsimile of it that ChatGPT actually does that. But what can it do with structured data? If you give it a structured query in some form or other, can it actually do a lot more, because you've provided some of the structure that it has to kind of interpret out of thin air if you're just kind of chatting to it? Are we done with ChatGPT? We kind of hit a lot of
I
it.
actually did want to ask you about your dad using it. And
Oh, yes.
I haven't.
Joking, but
My dad, I got a text message from my dad the other day. Let me see if I can find it. It says, "Hi guys, it's to me and my brother. I've created an account on ChatGPT. ... Wow, it's really cool what it can do. ... Classic, you know, old. He's my dad, old person.
Classic. Yep.
Yeah. And I haven't seen him. I've seen him on the weekend, so I haven't
Yeah.
totally heard what he's been up to it with it. He did say he's currently trying to sell my grandparents' home, not out from under them. They passed away. And
sorry
he
for
said,
your loss.
"Thank you." And he said he asked it what he should do to help sell the home, and he said it suggested lowering the price, which I don't think he was super on board with. So
to be fair, it would help sell the home.
it would. It's true. I did kind of caution him. I said, "Dad, just watch out. It can be wrong." My dad is a lot of things he's interested in, right? But like a couple of things I suggested: ask him a question. He makes wine. Ask him a question about winemaking. Ask him a question about flying. Right? He's also like a flight instructor. He didn't get back to me as to whether it did that. But his theory was that, well, it would probably do pretty well on those things because they're kind of like technical topics, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, it depends what it's been fed into, or what's been fed into it, right? Like, didn't it pass like the bar exam or something
Yeah.
in the United States?
yeah,
Passed as a solid B+ student, I believe.
Solid
Really?
B+, solid B+.
Well,
Alright.
yeah. I'll play around. Maybe I'll report back next time we do a bit of recording. I'll
Yeah.
play around with it a little bit with him. I might test him. That's really.
Even less than a test, right? Like, I feel like the way that we are interacting with it and a lot of people that we talk to are interacting with it is, what can this do in terms of giving me code? And you know,
Yeah.
I'm looking at this as a software engineer, but it has gone viral for a reason, right? There are
Totally.
a lot of people using it. That's why I'm really interested in what, I guess, lay people are using it for, right? Like,
I'll get a full
what's
report
the-
from my dad.
Yeah.
Because I'm very curious
Take a
as
microphone,
well.
please.
You know what? Yeah, why
Get that
not? I'll get him
recorded.
to. Yeah, he would love. I don't think I'll stroke his ego like that. He would love that. But I mean, one of the reason I want to test him versus ChatGPT is because one of the things he often says that I often troll him a little bit about is, you know, obviously,
Autopilot.
In the
There it
planes, they've got the
is. I knew it.
autopilot, right? And he will always go, "Oh, I can fly a plane better than any bloody machine." And I'm like, "All right, Dad, really? Is that really true?" And he knows he knows what an autopilot is and how it works. He's a flight instructor. He's very experienced. But it would be interesting to see what it says versus what he says
Yeah.
if I asked them the same question.
And what about the dark side of ChatGPT that we haven't really talked about? We've talked about it generating code, right? And we've talked about it, can it take our jobs? And so we know that's not going to happen. But it's clearly good at some things. It is good at generating probable code. So what happens when someone malicious gets a hold of that kind of technology?
Yeah, totally.
To me, it's not doing anything that a person couldn't do, though. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
It's the same as if the person who got a hold of malicious code was to go off and write it themselves.
I mean, it's a very good point, though, for sure. Because this is what we see with everybody else. Oh, the bad guys are using encrypted messaging, so we should block encrypted messaging. So
Yeah.
actually, hold up on that. That actually might be bad for everybody. I'm sure in probably the next 6 to 12 months, we will see conversations at probably high levels of government saying, we should restrict the use of ChatGPT because ChatGPT wrote something that did something bad. Somebody used it to do bad stuff. Or, you can think of all sorts of horrible examples and kids using ChatGPT and all
Yeah.
sorts of bad stuff, right? But
Well, why don't we stick with the engineering space just for this argument?
Sure.
So ChatGPT and academia, for example, right?
Sure.
Because we're talking about engineers using it in code generation. Now, that's a really useful tool to be able to generate some code. And there are things out there that aren't ChatGPT that can do that, right? Like Visual Studio and ReSharper and all sorts of things can be like, I can generate you a boilerplate or a template. And that's really useful. So when we start talking about academics and, we're talking about, you've got a test and your test is to write a bunch of code. It's like, well, is it cheating if you use the tools? Because it is a tool, right?
It is a tool. So I think where a lot of that debate is kind of missing the point to me a little bit is that people are already able to do that, right? It's just now it is access. Previously, you could absolutely pay someone to just write your test answers, write your essays, but you had to have the money to do it. A lot of uni students don't have that.
So what I'm hearing is ChatGPT is taking the jobs from the people who
Fiverr helping people pass their test.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of this is stuff that you could get from Fiverr ultimately, and the problem was that no one was going to do it when it was a couple of people, right? It didn't really matter, but those were also the people who could afford to do that.
Yeah,
you're spot on. And let's not claim that technology is neutral, right? Technology has a viewpoint, and technology is made by people, and therefore it's imbued with them. But this particular technology is democratizing something that, like Bridget saying previously, it is an equalizer, and I think. And I think much like, sort of end-to-end encryption and secure messaging, and much like the internet itself, right? It confounds a lot of ideas about who should have access to what, and it defeats a lot of barriers around should you be able to share songs with your friends, and what about the copyright? And we're going to bump up into all of that all over again.
I feel like one of the memes in engineering is often, it comes down to someone will be like, you stole this from me, or I stole that from you. And then it comes to engineering and they go, hey, bro, I stole your code. And then the person's, not my code, bro. Right? How often we go to Stack Overflow or some other source and just copy paste the code because we're like, well, it works. Why would I reinvent the wheel?
But that is a very unique, I think, thing about engineering, and we're lucky that we've, and I think I would temper that with that's not true everywhere, right? There are people and organizations that are extremely protective of what they see as their quote unquote intellectual property, whether it is actually valuable or not, and whether it is just the same as you could put it on Stack Overflow, right? But I think that's unique to engineering, and when something like ChatGPT happens, where it is a bit of a cultural phenomenon, right? You're going to bump up against all those other industries where that is not the norm, that you can just take this thing and repurpose it and reuse it. And if anybody wants to listen to one of my favorite YouTube videos of all time, Cory Doctorow, who's a huge tech rights advocate, very smart guy. He did a talk many years ago called The Coming War on General Purpose Computing. And I think it touches on some of these issues, which is what happens when you take a technology and you democratize it, and then you try and it sort of seeps into every aspect of everybody's lives, and then the bits of the world that don't operate the way that tech and engineering operates push back a little bit and say, okay, well, we shouldn't be able to just do anything. We should be able to, here's the conversation that for sure will happen, right? How can we make a ChatGPT that can do whatever you want, except it can't pirate music, right? Or it can't, it can't
give legal advice,
it can't
give medical advice.
Right. And the answer is it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to do that in any meaningful way. And this talk, it's really fantastic. The Coming War on General Purpose Computing, go watch it. It's my must watch for anybody who deals with technology, because you should be conscious of these kind of social issues, I think, if you work as a technologist. And the answer, at least in terms of, stopping access to people using software, or stopping access to people pirating music or whatever, every solution that we try to get a computer to run all of these things, to run everything except for some subset, everything that we've tried to do that basically ends up with malware and spyware, right? That's his kind of argument, is that the only way to actually do it is to kind of monitor what you're doing and then say, no, you can't do those. You can't actually make the, and there's a whole Turing completeness thing, right? You can't actually make the computer, the chip that's running the code, not be able to do some things and be able to do other things, right? There's lots of, computer science theory that backs that once you get to a certain point, it can just do everything, right? There's nothing you can restrict it to do. And there's probably a similar thing in some sense with ChatGPT, in that how do you make a large language model, that can do everything but can't do some things, right? It's very, you can just not train it. If you don't want it to give medical advice, right? Remove any medical stuff from the training data set, but how do you even figure out what that is?
I guess the other thing is too, then, if you ask it a medical question and it doesn't have any training too, right? Is that going to give you a really bad answer?
Totally. And how do you, and we're already seeing
the
this,
context, right?
It needs the context for other reasons, right? Like, how do you draw a ring around the things that are medical advice and exclude them, right? And we're already seeing some of this a little bit in that, the people that have made ChatGPT and other large language models try and put in these safeguards to stop you from doing things, and it's very easy to defeat them.
Yeah.
Right? And it's going to be this constant cat and mouse, and I think there'll be a similar thing with the testing, right? To bring it all the way back to where we were, like testing in academia and whatever. If your test, and probably testing in hiring, right? Hiring software engineers. If your test is to get somebody to write some code, maybe that was never a very good test to begin with, because now everybody can.
That's a great segue. Coding tests. What do we think? Do we think no? And seriously, because some companies just say no, we don't do code tests. They don't prove anything. And other companies are like, oh, if you can't do the coding test, you're not in. What do you think?
For hiring?
Yeah, for hiring. So as engineers, like I've done some very easy coding tests in my time, and I've done some really hard ones.
Have you ever written FizzBuzz in an interview?
I've never had it for an intervieue, amazingly. I've always had it thrown out as the thing, but I've
Reyna
never actually had to do FizzBuzz.
Yeah, I've done FizzBuzz, and I was like, okay. I've been practicing my entire life to be able to do this. I hope I can do it.
Because, at the end of the day, for me, I'm like, if it works, like, does it matter? Because we say FizzBuzz, for example, right? And it's like, am I going to write enterprise-level code for your FizzBuzz app? No.
If you haven't seen the Enterprise FizzBuzz, it's fantastic. Go on, it's on GitHub, I think.
GitHub, Enterprise FizzBuzz. I can't wait to see it.
I do think a lot of it is also about the context, though. Like coding tests that are going to take you like 10 hours, not on, right? That's already indicative that the company does not care about your time.
Labor.
Right?
Yeah.
Like before you even get there, they're like, you want to do 10 hours of this? I do think it's nice. I tend to like them more as like pairing exercises, because it gives you a really good idea of like what a person is actually like to work with, right? Like, are they going to sit there and it's hard because it's an interview setting as well, right? So there is going to be some sort of panic, presumably, from the candidate. But I do think that a lot of it is like, if you can get them to sit there and basically play nice while they're pairing, it's probably a sign that they're going to be nice to work with, right? You can also see, like, as they're coding, like, generally, do they talk you through the problem? Like, can you see kind of the logic of what they're going through? Because if they can stop and explain it, then they're probably going to be able to approach problems in a very formulaic way, right? Where they can stop and break it down instead of just being like, oh, I'm just gonna run with it. So I do think coding tests are nice, but I do think less of a like, oh my God, can you solve this complex problem? And more of a like, can you show me how you solve problems?
I think the scenario that is very useful in, which I think people overestimate that they fall into this bucket. If you fall into the bucket of the Googles and the Amazons and the Microsofts, where you have potentially hundreds of people applying for a single role, and I think this applies to a lot of practices that get kind of the airtime in the tech industry because the big people talk about them, right? If you fall into the bucket where there's hundreds of people applying for a role, it is not possible for you to go and do a pair programming exercise necessarily with every single one of those 100 people. You actually need something to set the bar at a certain point and eliminate the vast majority of people applying for that role. Now, it doesn't have to be a perfect predictor, right? But those organizations, from what I understand, are greatly biased towards, like, if they miss out on a few great people, it's okay because there's so many fantastic people applying for those positions. And so if you can set a coding test that is difficult, some people are going to get through it because they're going to plagiarize it, they're going to ask ChatGPT, or they're going to ask their friend who's a software developer to write it, right? But the majority of people won't pass that, and now you have a smaller pool to do your interviews with. And like Bridget was saying, things like pairing exercises and things that what you should actually be hiring for, which is not being able to pull facts out, but how well you're going to work with other people and how well, they say software engineering is a team sport, right? How well you're going to integrate as part of the team.
And I mean, like, also, it's not great for an interview because people are nervous. Like, you don't really want to put them on the spot. But I do really like to see how people approach something that they don't know, right? Like, I wish that was something we could kind of do in interviews more, is like pull up something completely new and be like, how do you want to solve this, right? Like, how do you approach something new? Like, are you going to kind of panic and be like, well, I haven't done this before, so I'm not going to do it? Because, like, ultimately, to each their own. I don't really want to work with someone who's going to be like, I'm not willing to try it and learn something new, because I don't think that's very fun.
And how are you gonna, I mean...
But that's the job, right?
That's the job.
Right?
Also, like, when you do join the company, that's what you'll be doing for, like...
Yeah.
I mean,
like,
talk about something...
3 months, 6
Yeah.
months, 3 years, 6 years. Like, how long until you feel like you're a real programmer, like you're a real engineer? I'm still waiting for that to kick in, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think people get to senior level and above, and sometimes they forget about all the things they get wrong or all the things they forget to do, or they're placed on a pedestal where, people just go, oh, well, Nick's a senior staff engineer. He never makes mistakes, right? This guy's amazing, right?
I make mistakes constantly.
Right? So,
It's learning from your mistakes that's the important part.
But that's the thing, right? Yeah. How do you learn? That's...
By making mistakes, yes. Like,
Yeah.
If you stop making mistakes, you're going to stop learning. That's why,
Which is the GPT model.
right?
Bring it full circle. That's how AI learns. It makes mistakes, then it goes, oh crap, that was wrong.
I mean, you can't deny that's a good way of doing it. I think the point I was going to make about ChatGPT, to bring that back, is that the people that are going to these jobs and they're not having to be challenged by anything new and not coming up against new problems and just doing the same thing.
That sounds boring to me.
It sounds boring to me, but they are the ones that are going to be replaced by ChatGPT potentially, right? Is that like, if you're not constantly kind of doing new things and having to come up with new ideas, that's what you're getting paid for.
Yeah.
Right? You're not getting paid to just churn out the same thing over and over again, because we know how to, increasingly do that, and it sucks, but I think that's the reality of it.
Cool. I think this is great. So for anyone out there listening, if you have any stories about ChatGPT that you want to share, any questions or anything like that, or give us your opinion on working from home. So give us a yell, give us a chat. Thanks for listening to us today on SEEK Bytes. If you have any topics you might be interested in hearing us talk about more, please give us a shout out in the SEEK Bytes podcast Slack channel, and we hope you enjoyed listening.